when you have a dinner, typically what you see
Right.
is people who've read the same books, listen to the same TED Talks, watch the same programs, and have a similar background, educational background. I think that's boring.
One of the things that has been most impressive to me about you is the way you use certain techniques for breaking new ground socially. And I was just thinking recently, I happened to be invited over to your place, and you had a group of very talented combat sports guys.
Just an eclectic group. Right?
It was an eclectic group, but there was a common theme. And the common theme seemed to be people who were very skilled in a ring or in combat-like situations. And it struck me that it was also incredibly diverse, that in terms of a diversity standard, other than the gendered issue, it was people of different hues, different religions, different cultural backgrounds, different age groups. And it was one of the greatest salons and dinners I've been to in a long time. And it consisted largely of, as the British say, people taking the piss out of each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a result, the intimacy in the room was off the charts. People were really opening up. People were being vulnerable. People were actually building each other up. And somehow there is no explanation for this behavior in the current cultural moment. It's like we've forgotten what this is. Can you say a little bit about what you think is going on?
Well, first of all, I think that it's unfortunately, most people don't think they can make a difference with their ideas, with their conversation, with their point of view, with their actions. That's a cynicism. It's a deep cynicism that seems to. And I've always been an optimist, and I've always thought, if you look at history, it's usually a small group of people with a passionate set of ideas that get things moving. I mean, sometimes it's not for the good, in my opinion. For example, Russia in 1914. I mean, you had a very small group of intellectuals who got the communist revolution started. I might have been part of that back then if you looked at the way, Russia was. But these are people that had the gumption. And if you look at the abolitionist movement, it was really started in England, I think in the 1840s it started, but it was about these sort of like evangelical Christians who said, look, no matter what, we can do this. If you look even in this country, John Brown, these were fanatics, but they were a small, energized group of people. The Quakers, they set these examples. You can even go into, if you think about the ramifications of the marriage between, I think it was Ibn Saud and Wahhab. The marriage of those kids, and they made a deal, and he said, "Let me preach my puritanical Salafi Islam, my puritanical version of Wahhabi Islam."
This is back in the 1700s?
This was they met, I think, in 1744, but, they subsequently, so this was a small group of very energetic people. Now, I don't think a lot of times the outcome is so positive in those instances, but for better or for worse, I think the way you beat a bad idea is with a better idea. I'm quoting Amos Oz, who's the Israeli writer. I never forgot him when he said that. And the way to come up with better ideas is not to purify your echo chamber. It's not to it's very tempting for guys like you and I. It's very exciting for me to be able to even be around guys like you. I love Sam Harris, and I love Jordan Peterson. And you guys are very intelligent. You're highly educated. And aside from the fact that personally I like you, but it would be very easy for when you have a dinner, typically what you see is people who've read the same books, listen to the same TED Talks, watch the same programs, and have a similar background, educational background. I think that's boring. I think I just do, man. I just love getting a Navy SEAL, a pro boxer who's never read a book, and then I put him with a D1 basketball player. Then I get a mathematician over there, and then I get an economist over here, and then I'll throw in a 90-year-old sometimes. I like to do that. A guy who's lived forever, who's an actor, like my friend Jack Betts. And then I'll throw in just two. Usually, I'll get two people who I know aren't going to say much, but they want to listen. You need an audience, and what you get is idea sex.
Yeah.
You get an idea orgy.
We had an
people
idea
don't even realize
orgy.
it. And people, nobody looks at their phones, man. And it's 1:30 in the morning. And guess what? Everybody's learning from Eric Weinstein. And I knew that was going to happen because you come in and everybody there is, heavy armed and tight in the belly, and everybody can talk about Manny Pacquiao.
But all of these controlled savages are like quoting poetry, or they're talking about history. To me, and it's just funny to hear you say it. You say guys like you, and I always felt the comedians and the musicians and the people who even study chess or jujitsu. This is all one family of people who have, as I've called it before, a relationship with the unforgiving. Like in chess, you make a move, you take the consequences of the move. With rock climbing, you make a reach for a bad handhold, you have to deal with whatever comes next. Yeah. Comedy, same thing, mathematics, etc. And so to me, there is a commonality, which is, are you engaged in some activity that is not, where the feedback is not mediated by somebody's choice? Like there's no judge when you're a rock climber who says, well, I think that was an 8.3.
Yeah.
It's the rock.
Yeah, it's the rock. Yeah. Well, I think sometimes anytime you have a group of people that are all in the same discipline, the one great thing, we talk about fighting. I love to box. And one of the guys there, Malik, I don't know if you remember, Malik was the tall, thin black guy, about 6'1", 154 pounds. Malik's been boxing since he was 7. Now, Malik was going to be on his way to be a world champion. He gets world champions ready. I know from other people that Malik gives world champions, or did give world champions, fits in the gym, as in he'd light them up, as in he's something special. And what's fun for me is trying to box with him. And I talk trash, and I put in my mouthpiece and my headgear, and I cheat, and I step on his foot. I kick him sometimes. I do everything I can. Anytime he wants, he can put me to sleep. Anytime.
Right.
And he's nice enough just to pat me around, and I'm the old man, I'm swinging. I try to hit him. I do everything I can to try to hit him.
Right.
When we're done, he's taught me a couple things. I'm building my tree of knowledge when it comes to boxing. I love doing anything I'm bad at because it's humbling, and somehow I think it opens other portals. It kind of somehow stimulates. I become better at comedy. I become better at things. I don't know why. And then what happens is we sit down and he asks me, because he's on this education kick, because he didn't have the benefit of an education because he was always boxing. And so then it's time for me to sort of tutor him as we're warming down, and we just talk over a meal. So it's a beautiful kind of symbiotic relationship where I get so much from him and so much wisdom, and he gets so much from me. Now, I'm also 20 years older, which is the only reason he can beat me. All right, whatever. Okay. But the point is that they're so I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, no, you're actually getting to another topic, which I'm fascinated by. You can continue the riff, or I can jump
No,
into.
But please.
So there's a I don't know how to say it exactly, but kind of a pattern that I've noticed that I haven't heard much commented upon, which is that social interactions get really rich when people can pass power back and forth. In other words, if you have some kind of power and you sit on it, it's not nearly as powerful as if I somehow give it away to you and you give it back to me. So for example, if you look at a happy couple, maybe the man praises his wife to the hilt, talks about how he married up, et cetera, et cetera. And in return, she talks about how, what an honor it is being with a man she can look up to. And the idea is that they've both exchanged power and built something in the dyad.
But okay, that's a very important idea, and at the crux of why I put all these people from different ilks together, right?
Great, say more.
So one person has $100 million, the other person is having trouble making rent. What I like about putting all those people together that are so different is that Yes, Eric, you might be smarter at theoretical math, but you have deficits too. We all do. So you may be a superstar over here. Yes, Malik can knock me out with a right hand, but that is relevant only when we're in the ring. Right? It's a little bit like, so all of us have these deficits. All of us have these weaknesses. Where are you smart? Where are you brave? Where are you strong? Well, it depends, but we are all dumb, weak cowards, depending.
Somewhere.
Yes. And so when you try to get good at something, you learn very quickly what your limitations are, what your strengths are. You learn a lot about yourself. And one of the cool things about people who've been in a ring or in a cage or on a mat is they are very aware of how tough they're not. There is no one who you know who fights who hasn't been surprised, knocked out, humbled. You're not getting good at combat, which I'm not, but you're not getting good at combat with a big ego. Enjoy that, because what's going to happen is they're going to figure you out. You've got to constantly stay humble. The best fighters are the ones that I know are the ones who are always going back to class, always learning. So of course they're going to be humble. Of course they're going to give back. Of course they're going to, it's like my buddy Amir Peretz, who's this like Israeli, badass soldier, but now teaches self-defense. He's the most humble, loving, giving person in the world because he has a very, very intimate understanding of what real violence is about and how easy it is to take a life. I mean, we're just flesh and bone. So there's no such thing as tough. There just isn't. There just isn't. I don't like those words. There's no such thing probably as strong. We are all terribly vulnerable. I always talk about having children, and I hate loving something that much because it's like watching a balloon float around a hot lamp. Well, we're all that way.
Well, you're the first person actually who's said this. This is what I always tell people about having kids. That the main problem is that you don't want to love anything as much as you end up loving your child.
I mean, thanks for giving me something I can't bear to lose.
Right.
Jesus. So did you get emotional just now?
Well, yeah. I mean, because I actually lived it. I thought about a relative who lost a son. And, we've had 2 losses from auto accidents. And you see people just transformed by a loss that they couldn't control. There's no way to protect against it. And what it left me with was this idea that the most enviable person in the world is one knock on the door away from being somebody that you would pity.
Yeah.
You would just think
that's so true.
And so that's the weird thing for me about envy, which is, I've never had $1 billion, but I have a good friend with $1 billion, and he's let me borrow his lifestyle for short periods of time. I had another friend who owned an island, and so he let me borrow his island. And so I've at least seen and felt a little bit through pretend and play what it would be like to have a fantastic amount of money. And I wish I could give this as a present to everybody, to just try out the lifestyle for a day or two and figure out what it would do for you and what it doesn't do for you. And one thing it doesn't do for you is that there's no way to keep your children safe. You can just do the best.
There's no way, dude. That's for sure, that we are always, I think Jordan Peterson was talking about, in the Bible, the Garden of Eden still, it's as great as it was, a snake still got in.
Yeah.
I mean, as even God couldn't keep a snake out of the Garden of Eden. I mean, there is always danger lurking, and you have to come to terms with that.